4 years ago, in March of 2017, a conflict about hiring practices at the UUA erupted on social media and spread like wildfire, with critics claiming that the UUA favored hiring white people for senior staff roles. I cannot possibly do justice to the complexity of this conflict, but to make a long story short, as the conflict unraveled, detailed information came to light, like the fact that out of 56 people with supervisory responsibilities at the UUA, only 8 were people of color, less than 14%. Reading Facebook posts and blogs online, it soon became clear to me that this crisis was at the heart of our denomination and who we are as a people of faith. We were dealing with systemic and institutional racism, and it didn't look good at all. I nearly lost my faith at that time. Have we learned nothing at all? I wondered. 2 weeks after the hiring conflict came to light, the then president of the UUA, Peter Morales, resigned. His term was to expire at the end of June. With no president at the table, it fell on the Board of Trustees to appoint an acting president for the remainder of the term. And when the announcement of their decision broke, I rejoiced. 3 Black people were appointed to lead the Unitarian Universalist Association as co-presidents until the election at the 2017 General Assembly. The Reverend Bill Sinkford, the Reverend Sophia Betancourt, and Dr. Leon Spencer. My faith was restored, and I was so proud. This momentous act got me thinking about racial conflicts in our denomination. First, I thought about the TJ birthday ball debacle. As that crisis erupted, immediately after the letter of protest about celebrating Thomas Jefferson, my minister, David McPherson, became quite unsettled and alarmed. He was remembering an event that took place in the late 1960s when the empowerment controversy threatened to tear apart the Unitarian Universalist Association. That controversy is far too complex for me to cover in detail, but I will give a brief tour. Keep in mind that the Unitarian Universalist Association came about in 1961 when the Universalist Church of America and the American Unitarian Association merged. Unitarians and Universalists had already supported the civil rights movement, and now, as Unitarian Universalists, members and clergy of UU congregations joined African American activists in the cause for civil rights and racial justice. There was tremendous social upheaval, riots and protests and marches were rocking this nation, along with the murders of a number of civil rights leaders. I am sure you remember. Our denomination at that time included many African American members. And as Black and white UUs became more and more actively engaged, different groups formed. because people had different ideas about how to do this important work. Conflicts soon began to emerge. It was a painful time all the way around. In the fall of 1967, one of the many groups that had formed within the UUA demanded that a Black Affairs Council be established, a group for the purpose of Black self-determination. The group also demanded financial support in the amount of $1 million. The Black Affairs Council was established in February 1968 by the very first meeting of the National Conference of Black Unitarian Universalists. A few months later, and in direct response to the formation of pro-empowerment groups, a group of Black and white Unitarian Universalists formed a pro-integration group, which became known as Black and White Action. It too was promised denominational funding, but in smaller amount. The Black Affairs Council and Black and White Action did not see eye to eye. There was a great deal of animosity between them. In writing about this controversy and what was happening at the 1968 General Assembly in Cleveland, Mark Morrison Reed had this to say, and I quote, "In the GA business meeting, the Black Affairs Council, known as BAC, funding proposal was placed on the agenda. And in an atmosphere of extraordinary emotional tension, the proponents of Black and White Action and the Black Affairs Council competed for the support of the delegates. On the third day of the assembly, the delegates voted 836 to 327 to fund the Black Affairs Council at $250,000 a year for 4 years. In the aftermath of Martin Luther King's death, what white person, given the guilt they felt, was going to vote against a resolution coming out of the Black Affairs Council? The delegates also voted to give $50,000 to Black and White Action over the protest of the Black Affairs Council, end of quote. Subsequent to that General Assembly, more meetings were held with hostility building, and it all came crashing down at the 1969 General Assembly. The empowerment controversy came to a head when about 400 people staged a walkout during that General Assembly. The controversy nearly undid the Unitarian Universalist Association. That was at that time only about 8 years old. Back at the 1993 General Assembly in Charlotte, North Carolina, my minister was not the only one who remembered what had happened in the late 1960s. Many people feared that the Thomas Jefferson conflict too could result in a walkout. The last time Hope Johnson and I were together was at the 2018 General Assembly in Kansas City. On the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the 1993 General Assembly, we, together with Leon Spencer and Wayne Arneson, gave a presentation titled 25 Years Later, the TJ Ball. How I wish we had signed up to have that presentation video recorded. It was quite an impressive event, as a number of participants in that um, at that program, attendees, added to the stories that Wayne, Leon, Hope, and I had. In any case, Hope and I wanted very much to have music be a part of that presentation. So we invited Reggie Harris and Greg Greenway to sing several of their songs. One of those was Mighty Long Way. When writing that song, Greg was inspired by the late US Representative John Lewis and his journey from Troy, Alabama, where he was born in 1940, to the US Capitol building in 1986. Lewis's office window looked out over the National Mall and the Lincoln Memorial.